What's up guys, it's Lord Both here for another video, and you may recall that in 2023, Warner Brothers had the #1 movie in the world. It made well over $1 billion. It was called Barbie. They also had the #1 video game in terms of sales that year. It was called Hogwarts Legacy. And for all that success, Warner Brothers is still yet further in debt and still ended up taking a loss that year. Now, part of that was owed to things like Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, which was absolutely a monumental flop of a video game that could only be rivaled in its failure by Ubisoft's Skull and Bones, which is weirdly still active, and of course the all-time great in terms of failures, Concord. Kill the Justice League failed so hard that they didn't even give the ending of it a real cutscene ending. They made it this weird drawn comic collage ending where they explained that, spoiler alert, the evil Justice League members were clones the whole time. It's a Deus Ex Machina ending. And they ended up bringing back every member of the Justice League, except for, funny enough, Wonder Woman, who they obviously didn't originally make evil in this game because they wanted to show for the feminists. So where am I actually going with all this? Well, the point here is that Warner Brothers has built a reputation for themselves recently, and by recently I mean the past 20 years, as being a company that takes L after L after L with occasional very brief moments of great success that helps keep them afloat. And one of those very brief moments of great success was Hogwarts Legacy. And you would think when that game came out, and it was so incredibly popular and had such great sales, despite the fake contrived controversies around it, all having to stem from essentially J.K. Rowling's political beliefs, you would think that they would see those numbers and be like, we have to act on this, fast track DLC, anything we can possibly get out to help drive sales of this game. This is working, give us more of that. But in true Warner Brothers fashion, in true loser Warner Brothers fashion, they have gone the complete opposite route of that. This comes to us from Insider Gaming, entitled Hogwarts Legacy Definitive Edition canceled by Warner Brothers Studios. Warner Brothers Games has canceled the planned Hogwarts Legacy Definitive Edition. According to a new report from Bloomberg's Jason Schreier, the Definitive Edition and DLC's cancellation comes as part of an ongoing restructure at the entertainment company's video game unit. So they're blaming the fact that they have to tear everything down to the studs because they messed up so bad on all their other projects. And this is a victim of that. Also, I will mention, this isn't just the Definitive Edition. They say DLC here too. That DLC was essentially an expansion of several hours of gameplay. We'll get into that in just a sec. What else do they blame the cancellation on? Well, they say that the project was officially canceled this week due to concerns that the amount of content was not substantial enough to justify the price being considered. So they're not only just blaming restructuring at the company, they're now blaming, oh, we didn't have enough content to justify the price. What this tells me is that they wanted the DLC, the expansion, maybe even the definitive edition that included that, to essentially be the size of probably something like Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, where it's so big that it's almost its own game on its own. And they probably wanted to charge Shadow of the Erdtree price for that, around $40, which would make the definitive edition of the game pretty dang expensive. And the fact that they could not squeeze enough content out to get to that point is kind of embarrassing. The new version of the game was scheduled to include 10 to 15 hours of additional content, including a new story quest, side quests, activities, and outfits. In addition to the definitive edition of the game, the DLC was expected to be available separately for those who already owned the base game. Yeah, so it was supposed to be Shadow of the Erdtree, except more light of a version. Because Shadow of the Erdtree is about 25 hours-ish of gameplay. With no extra content now planned for Hogwarts Legacy, the studio seems to be moving forward, focusing on the eventual sequel to the popular game. Back in November, outgoing Warner Brothers Games president David Haddad said that Hogwarts Legacy 2 was a very big priority for the company, and that production on the game was in progress. Now, I will get a little bit conspiratorial here. I don't think it was just that they didn't have enough content to justify the price. To be honest, Warner Brothers needs the money enough, and they probably had the bare bones minimum of content enough developed, or at least in the process of developing, that they could have sold it for Erdtree prices and most people probably would have bought it. Even if there was some griping. Harry Potter fans go nuts for their Harry Potter content. And if you give them more Harry Potter content, even in video game form, they're going to go back to the game and they're probably going to buy it. I think the real factor here was time. So what do we know about the sequel to Hogwarts Legacy? We know that it's not actually going to take place in the way back period that the first game took place in. The late 1800s, right? Which, to be fair, I kind of actually like that. They were taking a page out of things like KOTOR's book, where they're like, what if we did a story about Hogwarts and the wizards and witches of the Harry Potter world, but we did it very far removed from anything that had to do with those original stories, so we don't have to mess with the lore of that or anything. We can just do our own story in the world. However, now, it looks like from all the reports that they're trying to make almost a companion game that's going to go along with the TV series that's being developed. The TV series at HBO, which has had its own share of controversy lately. With Black Severus Snape and all that, I feel like I don't really need to go on. But that series is starting its casting. It's going to go into development soon. Eventually, within a year, maybe two, it's gonna put out its first season. And this game, which supposedly is supposed to be kind of a prequel to that series, or a companion to that series, is gonna need to come out relatively close to it. And with the amount of time it takes to develop a game in this day and age, especially by these big, wasteful corporations like Warner Brothers, even at Avalanche Studios that's doing the game for them, it's gonna take years to develop a very expansive game on par with even the original Hogwarts Legacy to go along with it. The only problem is that this new game has to have something more to it than just being you go to Hogwarts and you get to live out your Harry Potter fantasy. Because that's been done now. Now they're going to have an actual story, an actual thing that gets you invested in the game, not just the fantasy that people want to live out. Because let's be honest, the story of Hogwarts Legacy is quite honestly its definite weak point, with elements of other stories that have been done a lot more and a lot better woven together to try to make it. Luckily for enough, if they make a companion game to this series, that means that they can essentially be lazy again because they have another series that they get to work off of. And they could just be, oh, well, this has to happen here because this happens in the show, so let's go with that, and etc., etc. But the point here is that they've stopped working on DLC, and they've canned this DLC, they've canned this expansion for the original game because the crunch is on, and they have to get started for the next game. Because if they're going to be a companion to the series that's coming out, and that's going into development pretty much right now, they also have to start right now. I think that's the real reason why this DLC was canceled. Maybe the price point thing and the not having enough content and the whole restructuring stuff, maybe that was elements of it. But I think the crunch of having to develop a companion game to a series that's already being developed is the primary driver as to why they abandoned this DLC and expansion. Either way you slice it, it's a complete Warner Brothers L. They had gold. They had gold in their hands. They could have brought people back to the game. They could have increased their sales of the base game. They could have made sales, obviously, from the expansion, from the DLC, from the definitive edition, with everything included in it. But they didn't. They took too long, and now they got pushed out of a window where they could actually make more money off of this thing because the crunch is on. And by the way, if you think the cancellation of this thing has anything to do with controversies about the show or controversies about J.K. Rowling in general, I'd advise you to go look at how well the boycott affected the sales of this game, which was a 0. I don't think politics had any kind of role here. I simply think, for the most part, It's the crunch that's coming on. But those are just my thoughts on all this. If you have your own thoughts, go ahead and leave in the comments. If you like this video, go and like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like this video, I appreciate you watching all of it, and we'll talk to you again later.